Hello, beautiful people. Thais Sky here. Welcome to Reclaim the Podcast and welcome to day 2 of a series I'm doing called 10 Days of Worth. If you didn't catch day 1, that's yesterday's episode, I highly recommend you pausing now and going and checking that one out, at least the intro, so you get a general idea of what you're about to listen in on. I am really excited about this 10 Days of Worth, and I've already received a lot of really incredible and touching feedback about how excited some of you are, hopefully many of you, are about this 10 Days of Worth. In fact, I got a really such a sweet message from one of my one-on-one clients letting me know that, listening to this 10 Days of Worth every morning on her drive to work is absolutely so supportive for her, and that she's really excited to see how much she's grown since she's listened to this series in the past. The surprise thing is this series is new to her. It's new to all of you unless you were there 2 years ago to listen to my Facebook Lives, my 21 Days of Worth. You are getting brand new content on all things worthiness, belonging, self-expression, taking up space, claiming your needs, becoming unapologetic, navigating the worthiness wound, etc., etc. I am so happy that all of you are here listening. If this series resonates with you, please continue to let me know. You can reach out to me on Instagram at @IamThaisSky. You can also email me at info@thaissky.com. It would mean the world to me if I could hear from all of you. So let me know how the series goes for you. But without further ado, let's get into the next 2 audios for you. So we have day 3 and day 4. Let's talk a little bit about what you can expect. So in the day 3 video, I get into the nitty-gritty of what is worthiness and how we develop unworthiness, how it's actually quite inevitable for many of us to develop a worthiness wound. And then also this idea of why telling people to just be yourself can be extremely harmful. So we're really going into what is the worthiness wound in the first audio clip that you're going to hear. And then the second audio clip, the title of that video was called The Prison of the Woman. And this is where I break down the myth of the ideal woman, why we try to be good girls, why we try to be so good in the world where, if you watch the Super Bowl the Super Bowl halftime show here in the United States, there was a lot of controversy around Shakira and J-Lo and the sexualization of their performance, right? How sexy their performance was. And yeah, of course there's going to be lashback because in our patriarchal system, we really condemn women's sexuality while also making it clear that women are sex objects. So we're going to unpack a little bit about why we try to be the good girl and how we can start to untangle from that myth and find our own creative expression, find our own power, whether that's through our sexuality, our voice, our bodies, etc. Okay, so that's what you can expect in day 2 in today's episode. Again, let me know how this resonates with you by tagging me at @IamThaisSky. If this series is touching you in a meaningful way, please share it with your people. The more people can hear this message, the more maybe we can start to reclaim our worthiness in a larger systemic way. I really appreciate every share, every mention. It really touches my heart how many of you take time out of your day to share, to tell your friends. And so it's not going unseen. I really appreciate it. And again, if this resonates with you, please share it. We need to get more and more people listening to these messages. All right, let's get into the first audio clip. Welcome to Reclaim, a podcast for women by women on conversations that matter. I am your host, Thais Sky, international speaker, teacher, and a certified life coach currently working to become a licensed psychotherapist in the state of California. Join me here every week as I offer thoughts and interviews on what it means to reclaim your humanness in this messy world. I have a good conversation to have today on what is worthiness. Like, what is it? Like, what is worthiness? I feel like we all have a sense of what it is, or at least we have a sense of what it's not, right? We have a sense of what is unworthiness. And so today I want to break that down. Like, what is the worthiness wound? What does this even mean? This worthiness wound. Why do I call it the worthiness wound? Why don't I just call it unworthiness? And hopefully by the end of this conversation, you'll start getting a deeper sense of what the worthiness wound looks like in your life. Maybe it plays out in a different way than other people. Maybe it plays out in very similar ways. I hope that by the end of this broadcast, you'll have a deeper understanding of what that is. So when I think about what is, let's say, the worthy woman, like what is a woman who feels worthy? It feels often like a very fleeting idea. It feels like it's like every once in the blue moon, you feel full. And that's the best way that I like to describe it. You feel full. You're fully present and happy and alive. You may be watching a sunset, or you may be experiencing something really exciting, and you're fully present. And in that moment, you just take that deep breath and you just feel like, yes, I'm here. I belong. And then we have 99.99% of the rest of our lives where we're distracted with stuff and we're constantly being pulled by life. And it's that homeward journey, that coming back to ourselves, coming back to who we are again and again and again, that is really the practice of the worthy woman. It's not a destination. And that's why I think it's so dangerous when we're talking about worthiness, is that oftentimes it's sold as a destination. It's sold as, once you do these things, you're going to feel worthy, and then that's it. Like, you never have to address this topic again. But my understanding, based on my research and the work that I've done with women all over the world and my own self-worth, is that it's not a destination. It actually doesn't exist, this thing where it's one and done. And that's actually the point of the human experience. Well, maybe one of the many points. I don't want to assume I know what the point of humanity is, but one of the many journeys of humanhood, I believe, is to continually find a way to come back to ourselves when we've forgotten who we are. The beauty of life is to step into that remembrance of who we really are, in whatever way that looks like for you. If using the word God or universe doesn't resonate, that's great. Whatever works for you. It's about finding that space of who we truly are. And when we know who we are, we know how to act. When we know who we are, we know how to navigate things in a little deeper way. And so the journey of the worthy woman is not of reaching this pinnacle space of always feeling worthy and then nothing bad will ever happen. That's just an illusion. And it's an illusion that's very tantalizing. It's very tantalizing to believe that if you do self-development or spiritual work or whatever, the point of it is to reach this place where nothing bad can happen to you, where you are safe. And the point is, there is no such thing. We cannot prevent bad things happening from us, no matter how many positive thoughts you have, no matter how hard you manifest. Bad things happen. Shit happens. This is the human plane. If we had this much control over our lives and this much control over the lives of everybody else, and it was all about us, then why would we even be here? What does that even mean? Like, why would we be on this planet if we can act as God and wave magic wands and get whatever it is that we want? Right? Maybe there's a deeper conversation here. Maybe life isn't so much about figuring out how to control as many things as possible, but a way to come back home to ourselves again and again so that we can navigate what we can't control. And so that maybe the waves of life doesn't crash on us so hard. And so that journey of the worthy woman, the journey of remembering, that journey of coming home to ourselves is really the journey of understanding our true power, our true capacity. So the reason why I decided to call it a worthiness wound is because I love the idea of relating to our psychological pain in the same way as we address our physical pain. So when we think of a gash on our leg, for example, if we got hit by something and now we have a big cut on our leg, what do we tend to do? What should we do, I should say? What are we taught to do? We're taught to address it. Call 911, go to the hospital, get that taken care of. And then how do doctors take care of our physical wounds? Well, they treat it, they clean it, they tend to it. And it's the same thing about our psychological wound, which is this sense of deep unworthiness. I'll define worthiness to you in a second. But it's the same thing. If we run away from it, like I shared yesterday, if we run away from it, we can't address it. So I love the idea of calling it a wound because it is. It's a deep psychological space within us that feels broken. And it's our duty and our joy to look at it and tend to it and address it. So what I shared a while ago as a definition of the worthiness wound is that pervasive sense of unworthiness that lies deep in our bodies and includes the pain of feeling not enough and broken. And I want to be clear that feeling the worthiness wound is not like a momentary sense of, oh, I suck. Oh, well, I can do better, right? It's a deep sense of feeling not enough and broken. It's a place within us where we feel disconnected from our true selves, whatever that looks like, disconnected from that deeper sense of knowing within us, disconnected from that highest self, or maybe the words that resonate with you is highest vibrational frequency. Okay? It's feeling unlovable, feeling like who we are is not, we can't be loved for who we truly are. So we have to perform. How many of us feel like we have to perform in our businesses? We have to appear like we're succeeding. We have to appear like we're doing something right, that we're doing all these things, that we're living this cool lifestyle in order to feel like we're cool, like we're worthy of being entrepreneurs. So it's that feeling of unlovability, like who I truly am is not accepted. And in order for me to be loved and accepted, I have to fake who I am. I have to wear a mask. And then it's also a shame of who you are. How many of us have experienced shame for just being ourselves? How often did that happen in childhood, right? Where we did something silly, did something fun, did something well-meaning, did something that we thought was going to get a lot of laughs. And instead we got punished. We got told that we're too much. We got told that we're inadequate. We got told that who we are is not sufficient. So then we develop a shame around our desires, a shame around our deepest, darkest stuff. Okay. So it's that pervasive sense of unworthiness, that pervasive sense of brokenness is how I define the worthiness wound. Now, I do want to make extremely clear that the worthiness wound is not a fault, your fault. You're not defective for having the worthiness wound. And I truly believe that we're not born unworthy. We're not born unworthy. I believe that we are truly born as humans, imperfect, yeah, but not unworthy, not feeling like we don't deserve to be here. But then we enter our childhood and certain experiences, even if they are not considered extreme trauma, even if you didn't experience debilitating abuse or sexual abuse, physical abuse, even if it wasn't to that extreme, you weren't abandoned outside of a firehouse. So even if it's not that extreme, you, I am sure, have had many experiences in childhood where you will subtly internalize the message that who you are is not okay. And partly it's because our parents are carrying with them their humanity. They're carrying with them their worthiness wound. And so again, it's not that you're defective for having it. It's that almost this is an inevitability of being an adult and now, or being a human. And now as an adult, we have the opportunity to change the conversation. There's a beautiful story that I love. I'm filled with stories that I didn't anticipate to share any of these, but they're just coming to me. So there's this beautiful, beautiful story that I love, and I share it quite often, actually, about a little kid who witnesses his parents fighting, and he or she, they, are in a state of fear and trauma around their parents fighting. And they see their parents throwing things at each other, maybe abusing each other, and they're really, really scared. They're really, really scared. So they run to their room, they shut the door, and they start crying, and they feel so defective. You know how we do that as children. We see our parents fighting, and we think that it's our fault. And possibly this little kid experienced a lot of other pain as a result of their parents being the way that they are. And they don't have the defensive mechanisms yet. They don't have a way to navigate these big challenges. Little kids don't know how to navigate abuse. They don't know what to do. So in this particular story, a little angel came and said to this little kid, listen, I know this is really painful for you. And so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to help you forget that this happened. I'm going to tuck this into your heart. But you've got to promise me that when you're an adult, you're going to revisit this, and you're going to look at this, and you're going to heal this. And so the angel waved his little wand, and the little kid forgot all about this experience. And now as an adult, many of us tend to feel like, you know what, there may actually be something deeper there. There's actually a calling within me to look at some of these emotional scars that I have, that maybe that this is what's keeping me stuck. Maybe it's not that I'm not pursuing my dreams enough or I'm making enough money. Maybe it's this expectation that I've placed on myself to be perfect and to appear a certain way. And this is the gift of life. We forget, we disassociate as little so that we can find ways to navigate those deep pains. But now as an adult, you are capable of seeing this stuff without allowing it to collapse you. Yeah. So I deeply believe that everything that we do comes from a positive intention. It comes from a positive intention to support you. So even this defensive mechanism, even the feeling of the worthiness wound, even feeling deeply inadequate and deeply broken is stemming from a positive intention of wanting to be safe. So we don't want to blame the worthiness wound. We don't want to blame ourselves for having a place within us that feels deeply inadequate and broken, because you're just doing it to keep you safe. And if we're to step into a deeper place in us, if we are to go into that homeward journey, if we are to find a way to be with the complicated stuff that is life without getting overwhelmed all the time, we have to understand what that sense of safety is. Like, what exactly did you develop this emotion of unworthiness to protect yourself from? What is that? We've got to understand that first. We can't just say, all right, now just go feel worthy. Like, you don't need to feel safe anymore. You're a grown ass adult. You don't need that defense anymore. So just go on and be fucking worthy. It doesn't work that way. And we can't just rip that mask off. We've developed the mask to protect ourselves. And now telling you just need to rip that mask off and go be yourself. It feels extremely daunting. It can often re-trigger our trauma. And if you don't have a way of developing a new sense of vulnerability and safety within yourself so that you can take your mask off, you feel exposed. And so what will happen is something scary will happen. You'll use that as a reason for why you should never have taken your mask off in the first place. And then you'll just go back to wearing that mask in whatever way that looks like for you. So we've got to start to learn how to develop a new sense of safety within ourselves, right? That homeward journey first. And what I find is that when we do that, then the need to feel unworthy, it's a need to keep us safe, remember? So the need to feel unworthy, the need to put a mask on, the need to have these defensive mechanisms like shutting people out or being emotionally unavailable, it just starts to disappear. It just starts to slowly peter out. Not because you consciously said, I'm going to do this, I should, but simply because you don't need those tools anymore. And that's really the greatest thing. It's really the greatest thing. So when we're born, let's say, whole, perfect, in whatever human imperfection way that looks like. And then because of our childhood experiences, our adolescent experiences, and even possibly our adult experiences, we've started to internalize some beliefs and some ideas about who we are and our lovability, right? And I call that the split. It's like we're split from our whole selves. We're split from our highest potential within within us, not potential as in like you can make $1 million. I'm talking about the highest potential as in the highest access point within us. We're split from that because when we split from a negative part of ourselves because we're told that that part of ourselves is not okay, we also split from the yummy parts of ourselves. So when we split from the shadow, we split from the light. We can't experience total joy if we can't experience our deepest sorrow. And so developing a new foundation of emotional resilience and a relationship with our physical body, which is deeply connected to our unconscious mind, that allows us to access some of those deeper triggers and trauma and help us recalibrate our new sense of safety is kind of imperative. It's imperative to that journey of rising as worthy women. It's imperative in that journey of finding some sort of wholeness and healing. And I'm not saying that this is, a destination that you reach in 5.5 steps and then we'll all be happy again. That's not even the point. The journey is not the journey of looking good. The journey is not the journey of being a better version of yourself so you can make more money. It's the journey of being able to open up to more of life. It's the journey of being able to be with more of who you are without pushing anything away. And not to be a Debbie Downer, but it's when you do this work, all the other things that you want ends up coming through. So I'm not being a Debbie Downer here. There is good news to all of this, obviously, or else why would I talk about this? Like there's such good news at the end of this tunnel. Just like Hanuman leaping across the ocean, we can reach deeper reserves of strength and love and capacity within all of us when we're not constantly fighting ourselves and hating ourselves and wondering why we're broken. Okay? So the way I see it, the worthiness wound is a systematic issue. It's a systematic issue because we live in a culture that perpetuates our unworthiness. And look at how perfect it is, okay? We live in a society that keeps us unworthy, and it's brilliant because what happens when you feel unworthy? You consume, you buy shit. You feed into this idea that you need to improve your body, that you need to look a certain way, you need to exercise, you need to do all these things, right? You need to do Botox and whatever, and all power to you in whatever way you want to shape your body. And if it's coming from a place of how I look and how I appear is not good, is not adequate, and I have to change it, then that's a way that we stay distracted from our potential, from our power, from doing the things that we want to be doing. So it's brilliant that our culture would obviously want to continue to help us stay unworthy, because when we're unworthy, we just play the cog on the machine. We just stay unworthy. We just buy more shit. How many times have you bought something from a place of, I need this in order to feel better about myself, and then you bought it, you come home, and you're like, fuck. Now I have this thing, I have credit card debt, and I still feel shit about myself, right? So it's a systematic issue because while we are entangled in our unworthiness, we're not rising up. While we're entangled in our unworthiness, we're constantly reacting from a triggered, patterned place, and we're stuck in self-sabotaging behavior, and we're not actually fulfilling, any sort of anything that we actually want to be fulfilling, anything that we want to be doing, really. When we're stuck in our unworthiness, we're paralyzed. And then we eat, we consume, we stay in jobs that we hate, instead of asking for a different job or going after a different job or whatever that looks like for you. We stay in relationships that are subpar because we feel like this is as good as it's going to get. We stay in situations that continuously keep us unhappy because we feel like we're not worth it. We don't put ourselves out there. If we're entrepreneurs and you want to be more visible and you're not going visible because you feel like you don't deserve to be seen, because people have better work than you, because everyone else is doing this, and on and on and on. Yeah? So navigating and teaching ourselves and learning and getting curious and marinating on the worthiness wound, like I shared yesterday, is not focusing you're going to grow your worthiness wound. It's actually a really rebellious way that as women, we can start taking up more space in the world. So this shit is imperative. It's imperative. It's so important. So important. And I'm not saying you have to feel worthy to take up space. It's not this or that. It's both. It's let's explore why you're not taking up space, and let's take bold action to take up space. Again, in whatever way that looks like for you. So today's topic is a big one. I'm calling it the prison of the woman. And it's a societal conundrum that women must navigate on a daily basis. I wrote about this last week, the myth of the ideal woman. So I want to break that down a little bit today and talk about ways that we can begin to understand how this prison of our societal culture that have placed upon women, how we can start to navigate it. Now, I don't want to, of course, compare this in any way, shape, or form to actual prison. So think of this more as a psychological prison that has kept many, many, many of us believing that we are inadequate, believing that we are unworthy, believing that what we have to offer the world is not good enough. Okay? So I wrote about the ideal woman last week, and the ideal woman, or the myth of the ideal woman, is a societal construct, like most things are, about what the perfect woman should be in our society. And I'm sure if you sit down and think about it, you can easily spew out a few of these myths of the ideal woman. A big one is the weight of your body and the appearance of your body, right? It's supposed to contort to a certain size, to a measurement, to a look. For example, we want to be like very, very skinny where our bones are showing. We want to have small body features, but we also want to be tall and have long legs. We want to have us fit like clothes in a certain way, right? If we look at models, if we look at actresses and how women are portrayed in the media, most of them abide by this certain body standard. So then, of course, what does that lead us to do? It leads us to believe that our body is a sexual object. We're pure, as in we're virgins, right? We are not promiscuous. We can't have sex with too many people. Our ideal partner wants to make sure that we are a freak in the sheets, but that we've never slept with anybody else beside that partner. But also that we are sexy and that we wear sexy clothing and that we own our body. And at the same time, it can't be too sexy because then it's considered slutty. If you think about the ideal woman in the workplace, she is strong. She doesn't let her emotions show, because if her emotions were to show, then she's considered emotional and she's considered untrustworthy. There are many, many myths that we are navigating on a consistent basis. And not only are we navigating these myths from the point of view of our own internalized understanding of how a woman should be, but then our own internalized understanding based on our own experience of what a woman should be. So there's two layers of this psychological prison that we're constantly navigating: the idealized woman image and the idealized self-image. It's an image that we've created of how we should be. And if we contort to that, then we will be loved. Then we will be happy. Then we will experience the benefits that our society has to offer. This was definitely true for me. In fact, I still find myself sometimes catching myself falling in the spiral of belief systems that if I were to look a certain way, act a certain way, be a certain way, then I would be more successful. People would like me more, that I would be more lovable, that I would achieve more, that I would get more things that I want and I need. It's interesting sometimes when I'm on social media and I'm perusing through people's Instagrams and I find myself stumbling upon the idealized woman in my version of the idealized woman, and it always carries with me so much shame. Like I feel a shame, a sense of deep unbelonging because I don't live up to that, and I worked so hard to live up to that. Does this resonate? Do you feel like that is also true for you? Can you also pinpoint certain women that you're like, yeah, if I look like that, or if I acted like that, or if I did that, I know that I'd be more successful. I know that I would be more loved, right? We think. So the myth of the ideal woman creates within us this good girl complex, where if we behave like a good girl, if we behave nice and kind and quiet, if we are not too ambitious, but ambitious enough, if we can balance our lives, our personal lives and our professional lives, if we can be both the good mother and the good worker, if we are the good girl, then we get what we want. Then we benefit. And we've seen this to be true. We see women who are benefiting by abiding by these societal expectations, this patriarchal narrative that tells us who we should be. And there are, of course, patriarchal narratives for how men should be too. Everyone is a victim to this system, because as long as we believe that we are deeply inherently broken, we're going to constantly want to live up to something that's beyond who we are. And so the system perpetuates itself. And so we keep consuming, and so we keep eating and spending money and seeking validation outside of ourselves and feeling like who we are is not good enough. Yeah. So there's a deep, deep connection there between the myth of the ideal woman, what we're being sold to on a constant basis, and where we are, and our worthiness wound, right? So if you think about the gap between where you want to be, the myth of the ideal woman, and where you are, that gap is our inner critic. And the inner critic's voice is the voice of the patriarchy. It's the voice of the patriarchy telling you that if you do better, if you work harder, if you look a certain way, if you were just nicer or kinder, or if you just smiled more, then you would be happy. And so you can see how this creates a prison within us. You can see how this creates a spiral of shame, because who we are is so not like that. And the more we don't align with certain patriarchal narratives, the more shame we tend to experience, right? And that patriarchal narrative definitely includes being cisgendered, being heterosexual, being white, being able-bodied, being college educated, right? If we conform to these very ideal norms, then we hope we won't experience these uncomfortable emotions. The hardest part of all of this is that none of us can conform to the ideal myth. None of us can actually align ourselves perfectly. So we have to break down the system, because the system's not working. And in order for us to feel confident in breaking down the system, we first have to remove the tentacles. We have to dismantle these internalized beliefs about who we should be and how we should behave. And we have to notice the judgments that we make towards other women and how we hold them. We hook them with our expectation of them. Here's the big one. I'm a podcast host, so I have a lot of friends who are also podcast hosts, and we have this conversation constantly about how one of the biggest criticisms that we get on our podcast is that we say and so too often, that we do a vocal fry, that our voice is not pleasant pleasing. This is like one of the number one feedback that people give women podcasters. What's interesting is this is not the same feedback that men receive, even though they may be using the exact same language. And so there are tons of articles online that tell you how you should speak as a woman, how to improve your speaking. Don't use don't use it sounds unprofessional. Improve yourself. And we think, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, I don't like how and sounds, so I'm going to improve myself. I'm going to try not to say those words, without ever thinking and questioning that, wait, maybe it's not me. Maybe it's our system. Maybe it's the fact that we are being diminished. Our value is being diminished simply because of its presentation, because we do not align ourselves with the ideal myth of the woman. Because we speak in a certain way that doesn't sound pleasant speaking. Who decides what's pleasant speaking? Who has been on radio, TV show predominantly since the invention of those things? Who has been portrayed in the media the most? Who do we listen to the most? Men, and how men speak. So of course, how women speak is going to be different. And so notice your tendency to want to judge other women for how they wear, for what type of clothes they wear, what type of ways that they speak, how they present themselves. Odds are that's your own internalized beliefs of the myth of the ideal woman. And we've got to start to unhook ourselves from that, or else we're keeping ourselves in this psychological prison. And we're also expecting women to also uphold the system by keeping them in this psychological prison. And then it becomes a self-perpetuating cycle, and we will never be free. Dismantling the ways that we've internalized this is absolutely critical, because it is the lens in which we wear. which means it's affecting every aspect of our lives. And if you think about the good girl complex, which is a inevitable conclusion of the myth of the ideal woman, anytime we break that myth and we're not good because of our sexual preference, or because we don't identify ourselves as man or woman, right? We're non-binary, or because we're a different color skin besides the appropriate colored skin, or because of a number of things, then we feel like we don't belong. And none of us belong in a system that wasn't created for us. None of us belong in a system that wasn't created for our well-being. Our patriarchal, masculine-based system was not created with our well-being in mind. It was created to keep us as prisoners, to keep us diminished, to keep us small, to keep us obsessed over stupid shit like how our body looks. So we stay distracted, so we don't go after what we want. Our identity as women for the past thousands of years have been based on being a good wife and a good mother, and occasionally a good daughter. So now we're starting to decide that we want to wear different identities. We're starting to explore our space. We're starting to understand that we have more that we can take up. But if we're bringing that same concepts, the same internalized beliefs about who we should be into those identities, we're only continuing to perpetuate the prison. Yeah? So we've got to start to dismantle this. We've got to start to look at the ways that we have carried this expectation upon ourselves and how it's keeping us feeling like if we don't abide by those things, then we're not good enough. So I invite you today to really start to ask yourself, what is the myth of the ideal woman for me? What have I internalized her as? And that's one layer. The next layer is, and what has society told me is the ideal woman, right? Those are two different things. And sometimes they can be fighting one another, but they're both internalized within us. And in order for us to find true freedom, this is where we must begin.
Thank you for listening to Reclaim the Podcast. This podcast represents the opinions of Thais Sky and her guests to the show. The content of this podcast are for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for professional psychological, psychiatric, or medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified mental health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or mental disorder.